Hello, authors, and welcome to Self-Publishing Insiders. I'm Jim Mazavito, and I'm happy to be back after being gone about, 3 weeks? I was telling Phil backstage that, yes, I crashed my mountain bike. I broke a hip. I had my hip replaced. And if you see me squirming in my chair, trying to shift my weight, that's why. But enough about me. So today we are here with Phil Marshall. He's the CEO of Spoken, and we've got Megan Lazovick from Edison Research. They're both here to talk about the results of a very recent Edison Research survey. If I'm not mistaken, it's the largest study of its kind to measure listener reaction to AI-generated multicast fiction audiobooks against human-narrated titles. This came out, I think it was last week, Phil. And when I read it appeared, Variety magazine covered the story, and it was pretty mind-blowing. So we're going to get into all of that. But before we do, let me read you the backgrounds of both Phil and Megan here so you can see where we're all kind of coming from here. So Phil's a pretty remarkable guy. I've had the pleasure to meet him a couple years ago at Novelists Inc. at that conference, and then again at Author Nation in Vegas. Phil is a technologist, he's an entrepreneur, a storyteller who thrives at the intersection of imagination and execution. He's the founder and CEO of Spoken, the AI audiobook company, which empowers authors to create immersive single, dual, and multi-voice audiobooks using digital narration. Now get this, before founding Spoken, Phil trained as a physician. He earned his MD from Indiana University School of Medicine and a Master of Public Health from Oregon Health and Science University. He later pivoted from surgery to technology entrepreneurship. How does anybody do that? Co-founding Conversa Health, which was a pioneering conversational AI platform that became one of the most trusted names in digital health before being acquired in 2021. Phil is also a hard science fiction author. His debut novel, Taming the Perilous Skies, explores the consequences of his original theory of persistence, a speculative physics framework linking quantum mechanics, gravity, and time. So whether building AI systems, exploring physics through fiction, or amplifying the voices of independent authors, Phil is driven by the belief that the most fantastic world is the one we dare to imagine and create together. Awesome. Welcome, Phil.
Great to be with you, Jim.
I'm so happy you're here. Also joining us is Megan Lazovick. So Megan has spent her career tracking how consumer behavior in audio and media evolves alongside technology and making sure the industry keeps pace. As a vice president at Edison Research at SSRS, she works to develop the research products and partnerships that help the world's largest media companies understand their audiences. All right. I'm so happy to have you both here. As soon as I saw that Variety magazine report, I'm like, oh yeah. I immediately reached out to Stacy. I'm like, Stacy, can I get Phil on the show to talk about this research report? And Stacy was like, oh yeah, we totally can. And we can get Megan on with you too. I'm like, yes, that's going to be perfect.
Well, thanks for having us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Okay, I'm going to kind of set the groundwork here a little bit more. Phil, let's start with you. So you trained as a physician before pivoting into AI and audiobooks, and you're also a sci-fi editor, or a sci-fi author yourself. How does someone go from surgery to voice AI to publishing?
I don't know.
Okay, next question.
I just, as my colleagues are reminded all the time, just sort of my personal passions and my professional life are all one big mashup. I don't know. I years ago saw the writing on the wall when the internet was just becoming a thing, and switched between surgery and what the internet was going to mean for healthcare, and helping patients be more equal partners in their care. And of course, now that I've solved healthcare, you're welcome. You might, right. Nobody has any issues in accessing high quality healthcare anymore. And again, you're welcome. So now that we have that solved, I in this most recent journey after we sold Conversa, I went to go finish Taming the Perilous Skies, and that journey then again, confluence of personal passion and professional life, and seeing the writing on the wall in where technology was going to help storytellers to be able to bring something like this, and bring their stories to life through technologies like this. I decided I wanted to pursue it, and I was fortunate enough to find a number of great people to join me on that journey, and now we've gotten to a point where we've proven a couple things, things that we thought would be possible, things that we felt confident we would be able to prove at some point, and we set out to prove it as soon as the tech was at a point where we thought it was viable, not just as a proof of concept, but as a commercial solution that authors can go and use today. And so as soon as the spoken multicast capability on our V2, what we call magic mode, was available to us on the dev environment, in our development environment, is when we generated the excerpts that were used for the survey and performed so well that is now available in preview to the author and publisher audience broadly writ.
Very cool. Yeah, we're going to get into all of that. I think it's really interesting, the methodology behind the survey results and how the survey itself came to be. But before we jump into that, Megan, Edison Research has been measuring how people listen to audio, since like the late 90s. So I'm curious, what's changed the most in listener behavior just since you started?
Well, so I started 20 years ago, so 2006.
Okay.
And I came from media before then. I worked in radio. I met my husband in radio, actually. So audio from the very beginning, and
old school terrestrial radio.
Yes, and then worked in television, and then found my way to market research. And at a time where, boy, the audio industry was so interesting because digital media was changing the game. So in 1998, Edison Research had this study called The Infinite Dial, which is whole purpose was to measure the adoption of these new digital behaviors among Americans. And we conduct the study every single year. So we have benchmarking data of people adopting the smartphone, the amount of people who are using internet audio, the amount of people who are listening to podcasts, the amount of people who are using voice assistants, and so on. So just the longitudinal data of Americans' consumption continues to get fascinating as things evolve. So it's kind of been my passion to keep up with it. And anytime there's something new and interesting in the world of technology, I want to see how it's affecting Americans in their homes and their choices for their media.
That's so interesting that those studies were conducted in 98, because that was really, really the early days of the web.
Yeah, they had questions like, do you have electronic mail? That was one of the first questions in the survey. We don't have to ask that anymore. Maybe we should start, though, because I feel like it's swinging backwards in the other way now.
Yeah, back in the day when we didn't know how to spell email, if it should have a hyphen or not.
Yeah.
I thought it was, so yesterday you both did a webinar to explain the results, which was really interesting. And Megan, I thought it was intriguing when you mentioned during yesterday's podcast during yesterday's webinar rather, that people who don't listen to podcasts, you said that people who don't listen to podcasts simply haven't found the right show for them yet. And I'd imagine the same holds true for audiobooks as well.
Yeah, I think you don't, you can describe something to someone, but until they experience it in the right way, they might not be excited about it. So, and people have this perception of podcasts, but there's so much out there. Maybe they have this idea of two guys in a garage talking about something uninteresting to them, but there's so much more to it. And this new technology in the audiobook space, opens up the possibilities in terms of what will be available to listeners.
Okay. Let's see. Phil, I want to kind of address the elephant in the room. A lot of creators, understandably, they hear AI or AI narration and immediately think it's coming for narrators' livelihoods. In our industry, in the publishing industry, that's understandable. But what would you say to a voice actor or an author who's worried about that? Can you tell us about the ethics behind spoken? Do you guys take an ethical approach?
Well, absolutely. So, and we have a whole page dedicated to this at spoken.press that you can check out. There's a lot to take into consideration there. So one is the ethics of the voice models themselves. And so, making sure that those are ethically trained, permission based. And so that's absolutely. Oh yeah, thanks. And so that's important to us. And we work with a number of partners. We work with the top, best of breed voice provider partners and LLM partners. And it's important that we work with partners who hold that ethical standard. The other thing is that authors in particular need to know that their works aren't going to then be used for training without their permission. And so we have explicit agreements with every partner that we work with that not be the case. And so that's also very important. It's interesting though, when it comes to the voice models, it's a little bit different than other areas of AI, because when you think about how the training occurs, going from the grapheme, which is that letter sequence or that symbol sequence, into the sound that it makes using the human voice, or maybe it's the sound with that kind of accent, but this is a sound with that kind of accent. Those grapheme to phoneme patterns are well available either through permission-based sources or just public domain. And so you don't get into quite the ethical challenges there in this space as you do in some others. We do also work with a number of voice actors. We've got a library of hundreds of voice actors to choose from, and we'll help match up those just to the right character. But if you use, as most of our authors do, if you use the system generated voices that are created based on the character as you wrote it, so only you have access to the voice. It's designed just for that character, just for you. My book, Taming the Perilous Skies, has about 100 speaking characters. Each one of those voices has been designed just for that purpose. Those then draw upon the system-generated voice models, which again, you want to make sure are all ethically driven. So that's, yeah, absolutely very, very important to us.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's shift gears now. Let's get into the study. But I don't want to. I have this bad habit of like just asking all the questions that I want to ask, and then next thing I know, I'm like, hey, it's 10:40. We got 5 minutes left. So let's get into it now. I'm interested. What made you decide to team up, Spoken with Edison Research in the first place, and why now? Why is now the opportune time to make this? To bring it out to the public? We talked a little bit about this backstage, but why is now the right time?
Yeah, I mean, the choice of Edison was an obvious one. I mean, if you're going to, shoot high and you want to make sure that it has the greatest level of validation, you go with the most respected firm in the space, and they've done the best work in the area, and so that part was pretty obvious for us. Okay. The part that wasn't as obvious is, are we there yet? Are we there? And with the magic mode becoming available, and again, it was just on our dev platforms when we generated this, and those samples were generated without a single edit. So that's kind of interesting too. So when you think about, they were all generated without a single edit. And so when you realize that, it's okay. Well, it does represent a different beast now. It's not only generating it, without the need for edit, but doing so at a level of fidelity and a level of naturalness that is now, to at least to our ears, it was really compelling. And so we felt like we were at a moment just then, at that moment, not even a week before, but on that day, that we could do that. And so we knew that we were at the forefront, like literally the first to ever be able to generate and hear that kind of multicast delivery. And so we timed it in such a way just perfectly that Megan and Nicole and their team at Edison were also well prepared to now look at this. And they obviously had all the scientific background to do so, but then it was their design that just it's what did everything. Is the progression of that survey was such that people did not know it was about AI at all. They were just evaluating, did they like the clips? They were giving their genuine reaction and ratings across multiple parameters of these clips, whether they heard the human versions of the two clips or they got the spoken multicast versions. They either got one or the other. They were randomized into those matched groups, and so that progression, which we'll get into, was so critical to unveil what it was that we found.
Yeah, I'm excited to get into that part. But first, Megan, can you kind of walk us through the setup? Like, how did you design a blind test for something like narration style, and why was that important to do it in that certain way?
Well, first, I have to say how excited we were to have such a juicy research topic that we hadn't done before. So thank you to the Spoken team for bringing us this opportunity. We had done research on AI and perception around AI just by asking consumers, what do you think about AI narration? So we already had a sense for how to ask about that. But we also knew people had strong opinions, and it's much better to get someone's reaction if we truly want to rate this content, to have them listen to the content in a blinded study before they know anything about it. So we knew that was important. In survey design, there's something called the funnel, where it has to be sort of the most broad asked first. And then as you go, you get more specific. And that's really important because every question that you introduce to a respondent introduces an idea in their head. So we started with the idea of, hey, we want you to listen to this audio and tell us what you think. And then we got that feedback. From there, so we didn't talk about AI at all. After that, then we asked about, hey, by the way, what do you think about AI narration? So we're getting their thoughts on AI in general. They have no idea that we're going to then ask them, among those who received the AI sample, well, actually, what you just listened to was AI. Now, knowing it's AI, how do you rate that content? How likely would you be to listen?
Well, I will say, Megan, if I could interject, you skipped
Please.
one little step there that gave us such juicy little nuggets, and that is, did you think that what you listened to was AI? Here are the first 30 seconds again of it. Did you think that it was AI? And that piece just gave us, oh my gosh, so much.
Yeah, well, and that speaks to how good the technology is now, right? And that people could not even tell if what they were listening to AI or not. And it's even among those who heard the human sample. There were some people who came back and thought that was AI, right? So it's like AI is so good now in this area that it's hard for people to tell. So we, really fascinating to see sort of the before and after of the reveal there.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you too. I asked you a little bit about this backstage, but sometimes people, they hear about commission reports and they put on their skepticism glasses and they're like, well, this is a commission report, so it can't be that accurate. But tell us why, like, the data, it's all about the data.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't have the reputation we do if we just did anything that our client wanted. Right?
Yeah, gave people what they wanted to hear.
And we had to have some discussion with Phil and his team at the beginning to say, listen, we're going to do this right, and we don't know how it's going to turn out. So we have to, but it was really important to us to do things the right way when it comes to research. And I think that we knew in our gut that no matter what the results would be, it would be some real fascinating material to share with the world about how people perceive AI. So we just thought it was a win. No matter what, on our end, we're always, especially since we had done some work into people's perception of AI, but not this deeper study on sort of playing samples for people and seeing what they thought of that.
Okay. Can you guys describe the book or books that were used in the research study?
I should be able to.
Yeah, you should be able to.
There it is, right there.
There it is.
Yeah, my debut sci-fi thriller, Taming the Perilous Skies. So, for whatever reason, I write like everything I seem to write is always these characters with different audio voice, delivery attributes, accents and pitch and all. And that's the way I envision characters and have forever. In fact, when I founded Spoken, it was after my story, Kill Your Darlings, which I wrote for a workshop, with 6 interesting characters, different accents, different, pitches and all that. I wanted to create a multicast delivery of that. It was so difficult that it motivated me to build that product, because I'm a product guy through and through. And so as we kind of got to this V2 magic mode, capability, the multicast capability, and we got it on our dev servers, of course, the thing that I'm ready to now narrate and put out in audiobook form, which it hasn't been yet, is Taming the Perilous Skies. And so as we looked at the opportunity to take snippets of that, we knew that we wanted to compare different aspects or different kinds of scenes, because your single narrator exposition by an AI voice is one thing. But what we really are skating to here is the vivid interaction in multiple characters. And the reason that's important is not just because, hey, we have an opportunity to test that and look at it. No, the real issue is you always want to survey and study something that in the end is going to give people that are trying to make a better decision. Right? These are decision makers. They're trying to make a decision about which direction to go for their work. And we knew that the decision that they should be faced with, as long as we can bring option number 2 to the table, is vivid multicast using AI. And so the setup was, okay, single narration exposition, and then the other scene, vivid multi-character interactions with accents and all the usual thing. Because in the end, what we knew was a publisher or an author is faced with narrating their work either with the traditional single human narrator, which is what we used as the human version, or now spoken multicast. So that's how we set it up, and that's what gave us just great results. Oh, by the way, and we say this freely and openly, and we actually put it in the results of in the press release and all that as well. And that is in chapter 1, the excerpt with just the single narrator and exposition, the human narrator voice won on all metrics. So the human won on all metrics on just expository single narrator kinds of things. But when it comes to character-driven stories and scenes, the spoken multicast cleared the board. We
That's so interesting.
won every metric.
Why? I can't. What do you take away from that? Either one of you.
Megan, I mean, you want to give a stab at that?
I mean, it's in terms of experience, it's a richer experience for the listener. There's more going on there, right? Some of I'll have to find what were some of the questions there that it won. So it won every single one. I'll have to find. Phil, you could probably rattle it off faster than I can. The different reasons that they rated it highly. Overall quality, right? Engagement.
So favorability, quality, engagement, delivery of different gendered passages, accents, naturalness, just all that. And so I think 7 different metrics on the multicast, and I think maybe 4 on the single narrator.
Okay. I want to get to I'm going to go out of order here with my questions. In the webinar yesterday, Kevin McLaughlin, for those of you who don't know him, he's a best-selling sci-fi fantasy author. He's also the current president of Novelists Inc. He asked an interesting question about why the study wasn't conducted with multicast AI versus multicast human narration. I thought it was a good question. And then Phil, your response to that made perfect sense. So,
good.
Can you explain, it did. Can you explain that to our audience today? And I think this kind of goes to one of our viewers here who is asking, were the human narrations also multiple humans? So, does my question make sense to you? And can you speak to that?
Yeah. So it's what I just said a moment ago, and that is that really, if you're going to present something to the world and make it useful, it's got to be useful at the time you're making a decision. And there is nobody out there deciding between AI and hiring a full cast of actors. Nobody, other than maybe a Penguin Random House. Nobody is like, I wonder if I should spend $100,000 on a full cast, audiobook. No, not one of them are doing that. Duet, yes, maybe, right? I mean, having a female narrator do all female parts and male doing all male parts, and that's a great choice too. But generally speaking, single good narrator that does voices, or now presenting door number 2, multicast. Those are now the things that a person doing character-driven fiction are going to be faced with. And so that's why we wanted to present that, because it is the choice that people will be faced with. They are not faced with paying $100,000 for a full cast audiobook.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense.
Sorry, I seem kind of. No, I love Kevin. It was a good question, but it's also like, I'm just like, this is the other way to answer it. Imagine if we had done the spoken multicast versus full cast, right? Mm-hmm. What is that going to tell? What's that going to tell you? Like, okay, yeah, great. They both did pretty well. Great. I was never going to choose full cast anyway. I suppose to us it could have been nice if we did just as well as a full cast of characters. Hey, look at that. But that's not the choice that people are faced with.
Yeah, you're comparing. You mentioned yesterday that it was like, I forgot the exact term, the standard
of care. So if you think about, like, I'm from healthcare, right? So in healthcare research, when a new cancer drug comes out, the placebo is the standard of care, right? That's what is the baseline care for that cancer at that time. And so really all we're doing is comparing it to the standard of care.
Okay. One stat that really jumped out at me right off the beginning was that only 31%, did I get that right? Only 31% said upfront that they'd be open to an AI audiobook, but then that figure jumped to 65% after actually hearing a sample. Megan, maybe this question is for you. Tell us about when the reveal was presented to study participants and why the timing of the reveal was so important.
Well, again, we wanted to get their rating of the content before they knew how it was produced, so we could compare. So first we ask, suppose an audiobook you wanted to listen to was generated using AI voice narration, how likely would you be able to listen to an audiobook? So just the idea of this concept, 31%. But then we wanted to hear their thoughts on after. Then there was the post reveal. So we asked, how likely would you be to listen to an audiobook with this narration? So specifically, asking about that audiobook, right? So so post exposure, pre reveal, right? So those who listen to the spoken AI narration, 65% said yes. So they didn't love the idea of AI, but they said, oh, I do like this audio. I did like this audio thing. So yeah, I'd be willing to listen to this narration. And then once they found out that that specific narration was AI, it went down to 41%, which is still a lift over the 31%, right? So just general, and that makes sense though, just going from broad to specific. So AI is such a big idea there, and it's so broad. So and I don't like the idea of AI when I'm listening, but if you give them a stricter concept, okay, where we're talking about this, what about this as AI, then they're more open to it. They realize, oh, wait a minute, listening to this AI generated narration, I was able to hear multiple characters and it was more engaging. And so it makes sense that they respond differently after they've been exposed to the actual audio file.
Okay. And how many listeners are we talking about? I don't think I asked you that earlier.
So the study was over 1,000 people in total, and then we split the sample between 500 for human narration cohort and 500 for the spoken multicast AI.
Okay.
Which is a substantial amount of people.
Yeah.
And
they're
I've
all
done
audiobook listeners of fiction also. They were specifically, for that group. Yeah.
Right. We didn't want to it's not a Gen Pop survey. We wanted to make sure that there's some familiarity with the audiobook listening experience. So people aren't just rejecting either sample based on the fact that they simply don't like audiobooks.
Yeah, or don't like fiction, or yeah, right, exactly. I would like to, if I could, double click on something that Megan said. So I want you to think about that progression. Do you like this narration? 65%. Yeah, I do. Okay. Then generally, abstractly, vaguely, or not vaguely, but abstractly, do you think you would listen to an audiobook narrated with AI? Probably not. Only 31% said yes, right? So 65%, oh yeah, I'd listen to this. 31% said, listen to AI audiobooks. Well, so do you think this was AI, right? And then only 39% suspected, yeah, I think maybe it was. 35% thought the human was AI, by the way. Okay, so so 39% said the AI might be AI, 35% said the human might be AI. Okay, then after that, it was, now that you know that, would you listen to AI audiobooks? So think about that. Yes, 65% I'd listen to this. No, only 31% said I would. And then they're like, well, I guess maybe I'm a little more open to it now, and all that bias just kind of, you can just see it happen right there, right? It's thick as molasses right there. The bias, but what does it say? It says that if they hear samples of your work done in spoken multicast, the sample speaks for itself, right? The samples make all the difference. And it's almost like, well, should we even tell people it's digital narration? We believe you should, and we're all in favor of that. But it does speak to the fact that listeners, they kind of don't necessarily care.
Did those results surprise you, either of you?
Well, so it reminds me of when we were doing research about voice assistants when Amazon Alexa came out. And everyone was kind of like, "Oh, I would never have that in my home," or "That feels that's strange." And
that
then
sounds like something I would say.
Yeah, well, so it really, like, they didn't like the idea of it. And then they go and they visit someone's house, and that person is cooking them dinner, and they say, "Hey, right. Alexa, turn on the timer." Sorry to anyone listening to this right now, and the Alexa turned on a timer. But they experienced it. And then they kind of weigh their decision differently, and they kind of see the benefits, and they sort of get over that initial hesitation. So it's just kind of what we've seen over and over again in technology. And by the way, those same people who are like, "I never want Alexa listening in my house," are the same people that walk around with a smartphone, and they're attached to a smartphone all day long, that isn't listening to them and knows everything about their lives and also their location. So it really is, technology is a part of our lives, and more so every day. And it just takes some time for people to accept it into their lives. And sometimes they need to experience it before they do.
Yeah. And I think it's wonderful how the voice actors, through spoken are being compensated. I think that's a huge part of the puzzle here. And with that, cost and turnaround time are huge for indie authors. So how does going the AI route change the math compared to, you talked about this a little bit before, Phil, but how does going the AI route change the math compared to a traditional narrator or full cast production, especially if we're talking about 2 or more voices?
Yeah, well, let's leave off full cast production. That's not in anybody's like practical consideration,
Okay.
right? That's 25, 50, $100,000. So really, I mean, if you're talking about single or duet narration, there's the cost factor, right? But we're getting beyond the cost argument. In fact, that Variety magazine article that you mentioned said as much, and that is that we're going beyond this being an economic argument to it being just better, like more engaging, higher quality. The delivery is more compelling, it's more immersive, and so the economic argument sort of fades away a bit. But if we're going to stay on the economic argument, many thousands of dollars for a human narrated work, and much less than that for a spoken multicast work, in the hundreds, say. And so the economic piece is pretty clear. But what people don't think about as much is the time. Yeah. So listening to your narrator delivery of audiobooks, then you have that back and forth. You have the punch list of the retakes, you have the pickups, you have the producing and the production that then has to occur by whoever's doing that. Maybe it's your narrator, but oftentimes it's you, the author, that are doing that. And so the time factor is significant. Now, I will say that while I've always said, audiobooks in a single click, and that's our tagline. The truth is that really only more recently has that been able to be true, because you're regenerating, right? Regenerating every one of those passages until it gets the inflection right, especially if you're a multicast where you've got this banter going on between characters. But now with our magic mode, we deliver that in a much more cohesive and just out of the gate correct, way. And so the amount of workload is lowering when it comes to getting the digital narration, the multicast especially, just right. And so yes, it's cost, it's time, but now let's just turn our attention to what's more compelling, what's more immersive, and what's more engaging. That really should be what we're after. What listeners want is what this survey looked at, and that should really dictate everything.
Gotcha. Quick comment here from Guillaume Maurice 3503, who says, I just had a brief browse through the Spoken website. The price they charge is very reasonable.
Oh, okay. I'll take
that. You'll take that? Yeah. Wow.
We charge in blocks of 5,000. This is interesting too. If you think about AI narration, typically you would get charged against your credits for every regeneration of everything you do, right? Every time you regenerate something to be better or more compelling or whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's not how we work. We're free to use, pay when perfect. And what that means is that you listen through your work. You do not pay until you click that publish button. You do not pay until you know your work is ready for prime time. And we do it by finished words. So it didn't matter how many times you had to regenerate something. Hopefully not that much, by the way. But even if you did, we don't care. It's in blocks of 5,000 finished words, and that's a very different approach to digital narration and pricing.
Gotcha. Okay, let me bring up another question here from the audience. This one was asked much earlier from at MT Glenn. Appreciate this question. What is the typical? Sorry, I'm choking on my words. What is the typical cost of an 80,000 word novel, one voice or two? I guess maybe we can compare that, Phil, if you know off the top of your head, for a traditionally narrated audiobook with one or two voices versus
that would be probably $3,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for that. But with spoken, that would, if you have the subscription, which you half off narration, it'd be about $200 or $400 if you don't. But we haven't priced. Magic mode is still in preview. You would use magic mode here. I mean, it doesn't matter if you use one voice, two voices, or 100 voices. It doesn't matter to us. There's no cost difference. So
Really?
use the 100 voices is what I would say. Just go for it. Go for the gusto. If you write character-driven fiction, go for the multicast. But in that case, with Magic Mode, we haven't priced that yet. It's going to be more, but we still plan to honor the half off cost with the subscription. So stay tuned on that. But you're talking about in the hundreds of dollars. You're not talking about over 1,000 at all for that particular work.
Okay. Before I forget, I want to bring up, let me go back over here. I want to bring up the link for the study. If anybody wants to read it, spoken.press/Edison survey, if anybody wants to check it out themselves. And I believe that page also will link to the press release at Edison Research too. Is that right? If they wanted to read the press release, but you guys can read
it does. Yep.
Okay.
And you can listen to the samples too, by the way. That's right. Fun. Yeah. And you can see people's comments too. We had a lot of qualitative reaction as well, which was really telling. Actually, Megan, you were the one who actually pushed for that. Why not just go ahead and add some qualitative? And we're like, is it going to make it too long? And now that's some of our richest things. I'm
a qualitative researcher at heart, just because I like talking to people. But those quotes were amazing because you saw some people who had some negative comments about AI before the reveal, and then afterwards said, "Oh, maybe I changed my mind. It's much better than I thought it would be." So the before and after verbatims were very, very eye-opening.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons too why I wanted to bring up the ethical question right up front. When we first started speaking here, because that also is like, no, that's unethical. You can't do that. You're taking money away from the narrators. But Spoken has a different approach, which I think is quite valid. Let's see. For an indie author who's kind of maybe sitting on the fence about AI narration, what would you tell them based on this data? Specifically, when does it make sense and when doesn't it?
I think that the barriers are lowering, whether that's cost, quality, naturalness of delivery, and also distribution barriers are starting to lower. And so even at Audible, there's some movement there that is very encouraging. And so I think that the barriers are sort of crumbling. I think it's all about just what's going to deliver that story. How do people get lost in the story best? How can people best experience the words that you've written? And so that's really what should drive it anyway, right? I mean, honestly.
Okay. Another question here from the audience. From Ellie asks, since it is all generated voices, can you do text edits easily? So,
oh yeah, in studio. And that's one of the things too. If you look at like Amazon's virtual voice, you just take what you get. Like you don't have the ability to go, no. So the progression of the workflow is your manuscript, high level analysis, what kind of pacing, what kind of rudimentary aspects of this are you looking for? And then lexicon, make sure that each of those difficult to pronounce words or unique words that you put together, that it's likely to pronounce that right. And then you choose your voices. We can automatically generate the voices based on how you wrote the characters, which is a very popular feature. And then finally your passages. In your passages, you'll just make sure that all the character attribution is right. Make sure everything that you've broken out as, maybe it's your narrator voice or maybe it's your main character voice, all that's attributed correctly, take it at a glance, and only then do you make spoken. And you can do your entire work at once, one click, one button. But at that point, then it goes and it builds up all those layers. But you absolutely could have changed any of that text. You also can change it after the fact. You can re-narrate any passage you want. You can change any voice you want. We're not going to charge you to change your voices.
I was going to just pop up a follow-up question, and he's asking, how do you deal with things like name pronunciation fixes? So you can go in there
Yeah, that's called lexicon. That's the step before voices. Get that
Okay.
right is what best you can, and then by the time it goes into the layering up of the cohesive scene, then that's likely to be right. But even if it's not, you go in and you make your corrections, your text corrections. You can do anything as text to speech instead of magic mode. But a popular feature is to go in and do speak it, and what that means is you just speak into the microphone of your computer how you want that passage delivered, and it comes through in the character voice exactly as you said it. That is a very popular way to correct anything that didn't come out quite right.
Wow. So pronunciation, inflection.
Everything. Yeah. It's called speak it. Yeah.
That's okay. Wow. All right.
You're making me want to write a book, Phil.
I hope so. That's great. That's great. And also, the intro, instead of "this is Audible," it will say "made with spoken," and then it'll read your title, your name in your narrator's voice, and then you can add your own personal intro too. So that's kind of a fun little thing before you hit publish.
Okay, a couple of things I just want to remind our viewers here, like, go to spoken.press/ethical AI to get a load of how Spoken goes about doing this in the first place. After you visit that page, then again, check out the survey itself, spoken.press/Edison survey to learn more. A final question for you both. If you could each leave listeners with one myth about AI narration you'd like to bust today, what would that be? Take your time.
Megan, you go first.
That's not fair. I would say listen to it before you try it. That's not necessarily a myth, but before you form an opinion, you better have tried it.
Okay.
I think that to go along with that, hearing is believing. And what I mean by that is that what breaks the biggest myth, which is one of quality, one of compelling naturalness and immersion and engagement, and natural interactions between characters, hearing is believing. And it will bust that biggest myth that it's not good quality. And you'll be amazed.
Okay. Well, this has been fascinating. I wanted to bring up the subject. I know that there's a lot of skepticism out there about AI narration, digital narration. So it was so important for me to get this topic just kind of front and center in our audience, whether or not authors out there, you decide to go this route. I think it's important for you to at least be aware of what's happening out there. That's why we wanted to cover this topic today, and how Edison Research and how Spoken wanted to present the data to all of you. Some quick housekeeping. If you enjoyed this topic, if it answered some questions for you, if you can do us a favor and share this episode with your author friends, we would really, really appreciate it. If you're interested in seeing what the next episodes of Self-Publishing Insiders will be, what the topic will be, who our guests will be, please bookmark d2dlive.com to keep track of all of that. And finally, for authors out there who may be investigating self-publishing for the very first time, why not go to Draft Digital today and sign up for an account? Phil, Megan, you're both busy people, so we appreciate your time very, very much. This has been eye-opening for me. I hope it was eye-opening for the audience. I hope you'll both come back and visit us again. Are there any plans to do any follow-up studies in the future?
Well, I'll definitely be testing AI and talking about AI for many years to come on many different subjects. But I would love to work with you again, Phil.
Oh, well, Megan, you all have been a delight to work with. And, it's funny. I think if we do another survey or another bit of research, it'll probably attempt to answer whatever that next biggest question is. But I got to tell you, I don't know that we'll find one again that's as big as do listeners find AI multicast narration as good or better than human? It's going to be tough to beat the size of that question.
Maybe it's time for qualitative. Instead of going for size, we go for depth, and we just do interviews, in-depth interviews with listeners after after listening to the content.
I like it.
Well, there you go. Well, Phil, thanks again. Megan, thanks again. And to our audience, we really appreciate you guys visiting us week in and week out. We hope to see you all here again next week. Phil and Megan, if you can hang out for a second, we're going to play our outro. Let's regroup backstage if you have the time.
Great.
Until next week. Sounds good. Until next week, we'll see everybody. Bye-bye.
Ebooks are great, but there's nothing quite like holding your own print book in your hand. It's a beautiful celebration of your writing accomplishment. That's why we've created D2D Print, a convenient and easy print-on-demand service built to make it easy for you. We've got more than 20 beautiful templates to give your book a pro look, and we can even convert your book cover into a machine-perfect full wraparound cover for print. Yet another convenient option for you and your books. And you can get started right now at draftadigital.com.